Welcome back to another episode of the PPMC podcast. And for those who don't know, PPMC stands for Poor People's Media Campaign. I'm your host, Kill Rupert Murdoch. And today I got with me the homie Tyke the Outlaw Elephant. But first, let's do the quote. Those in power can dream all they want about some grim techno-optic capitalist dystopia. And we likewise can fantasize all we want about some groovy eco-socialist utopia filled with free love and great music. But it doesn't matter if you can't breathe the air and can't drink the water. Everything arises from your land base. Everything else is the dependent variable to the land base's independent variable. No land base, no way of life. In fact, no land base means no life. It really is that simple. Preface to the Pacifism as Pathology, Derek Jensen. And the reason why we want to open up this show with that quote is because we want to talk about not necessarily the Trump presidency, but more so what the Trump presidency means to the environment. Because a lot of people have made mention that Trump has been flippy-flop with a lot of his positions and stances. One thing I would counter with is that I don't think he has ever agreed that there's global warming, ever said that he's going to make that a priority, ever said that he wants us to take charge and reduce emissions and so on and so forth. All I've ever heard him say is Keystone Pipeline is going to go through, which even before he made mention that the Dakota Access Pipeline was going to go through, you know, one could obviously give to understand that that's going to run through, that all the mining and the illegal mining that they were doing on native land is going to go through. All these fronts are going to go through. The EPA is no longer going to exist. So although the Environmental Protection Agency does very little, you got to think about in a time where we have something like Flint, Michigan going on, where you got the Dakota Access Pipeline going on, where you have the Keystone Pipeline, you have other mining situations, where you had fracking, where you know what I mean, where scientists around the world are in agreement that global warming is not a hoax. It's not a conspiracy. This is something real. This is going to destroy life as we know it. It already is destroying life in massive amount of numbers. And people don't seem to rally around that. I still, I've gone to a few meetings and people have been talking about a multitude of different things, but no one has openly stated, hey, this president is going to fucking put the last nail in the coffin of the land bases, which are the commons, which, don't even belong to humans, belong to the world, right? All the different animals, all the different species, what I mean? These are things that we have to protect. If we don't begin to protect it, we're going to, there's going to be nothing to discuss, you know what I mean? And, some people might, and I still hear that, right? Like people keep saying, he's all talk. He's already making decisions that should tell you what he's up to. He's going to deregulate capitalism. This is going to be a horrific scene of just this oligarchy of rich capitalist fucks exploiting the land, exploiting labor, and really like a cowboy attitude, a bang bang shoot 'em up, take the land, push them into the factory, force them to do this, fucking, ship those jobs over there. He's already showing us with his cabinet and all these other things. But what do you think, Tyke?
Trump's position on climate change and global warming seems to suggest that the phenomenon is completely non-existent. In his view, extracted resources are going to be here to exploit indefinitely, and his utter reluctance to address these social concerns will result in major social consequences, both liberal and radical alike. His intentions to fill his cabinet with other successful billionaires exemplifies his goal of running the country like another one of his businesses. Just take a look at the countless examples of corporations taking no interest in the social and environmental consequences of their business practices. Multinational conglomerates have sought assistance from military forces in foreign countries to harass and even kill environmental activists. Exxon has spent millions in trying to clean up oil spills. The Dakota pipeline, we just recently found out, had a spill. the whole fight that all our native brothers were having in on the reservation, and the whole battle with the construction company and all that, basically it's like it still ended up happening. you know and it's ridiculous. Like, people aren't paying attention to any of it. These aren't conspiracy theories. These aren't just random weird stories that people are just coming up with out of nowhere, out of thin air. These are real things that are really happening. People are getting hurt. The environment is getting killed, basically. Land is getting deteriorated. Animals are being affected. Entire ecosystems are at risk. People's lives are at risk. And it's just another representation of the capitalist mantra, which is profit over people. People aren't of concern when it comes to money. Trump is no different. His concern as president is to make America rich again. And whoever thinks he won't do whatever it takes to accomplish his goal is beyond naive. He's a businessman. He's going to do what it takes to make himself money, to make his friends money. That's why you don't see what we would say experienced politicians in his cabinet. He's looking for friends. He's looking for other businessmen, like he said, other billionaires, because his interest is in money. He has no ethical boundary. It goes, the only concern is money. His only concern is ensuring that he retains that control, that influence that he has as president, and putting people in positions where they can benefit him and his interests and the interests of his cabinet and the people that support him.
With that being said, what do you think about the unions? Because it looks like the unions are coming out trying to support and help basically the Trump administration, and basically trying to help with DAPL, or the Dakota Access Pipeline. And as anarchists, we've always known that the unions protect capitalism, and that the unions make capitalism, I guess, more tolerable. But now I think more people are going to begin to see that the unions might not be as revolutionary as one would have hoped. But sadly, I still think we live in an age where we need unions. So we're kind of in a double whammy, because this is going to make the unions look bad, but yet we still need workers to begin to organize into unions, I think, at least. What do you think about that?
That's the thing that sucks. We live in like a world where we're forced to accept contradictions. We know that these big unions are out to support themselves. They have their own interests. They don't have the workers' interest in mind. The state, they're at the beckoning of the state. Any type of real workers' resistance, any type of property destruction, blocking the flow of commodities, anything to that sort that's going to really impact the economy and really get people to start paying attention. Anything like that, the unions will never support. We're never going to have the true radical worker ethic that people are familiar with, like in Italy, or like with the picoteros in Argentina. We won't see that here unless people realize that the unions are just another tool for the state.
I mean, absolutely right. When you're living in an age where unions won't even go on strike, when the foot soldiers of the union want the strike, when they won't do occupations, or they won't do sabotage, they won't do all these tactics that are readily available. Of course, like, they're not a revolutionary force, but it's always nice because in the end, they do help as far as increased wages, as far as, labor laws and things like that. So, it can't be understated, but people have to begin to understand, like, the union is not the be all. And I think anyone that's looking at that has a messed up revolutionary idea. But, absolutely, especially with the tactics, right, which is something I'm sure we're going to get into on a later episode of, like, just sitting down and talking about tactics, right? Like, what is violence, what is not violence, right? Like, I heard about the DAPL people, the Dakota Access Pipeline people, destroying some equipment, and people were like, that's violent, that's property destruction. And what they don't understand is that global warming is serious. It's trying to destroy the world, killing all human beings and all other living animals on the planet. Now, violence is when you use disproportionate or unequal force. If you're trying to save the world, I feel it's fairly safe to say that destroying a machine is not violent. But like I said, we'll get into that in a later episode. With that being said, final thoughts?
I just wish that more people would start seeing the futility and the idea of work itself. We understand work as like as something that we wake up to and we dread it. You know, most people will wake up and they don't want to go to work. They don't want to do the 9-to-5 thing. They'd rather be at home with their families. They'd rather be pursuing interests, you know, pursuing their hobbies. But we don't get to live that type of life, and that's because of this idea that we need to work when it's not, you know, necessarily true to the, you know, to its full extent. Is like we don't need to be slaving away at the factory or the McDonald's or the office. You know, that's something that we're taught, and that's something that people need to try and break free from. I don't see it happening anytime soon, but it's just, I wish that more anarchists and more radicals really speak on the idea about abolishing the whole idea of work, you know, or at least turning work into something new, transforming into a new form, a new concept, something that's more about finding ways to be innovative, be true to oneself, and discover the things that we're passionate about. Work shouldn't have to be something that we hate. Work can be something that we're doing on a daily basis, but something that's rewarding for us in the end.
You know, and with that discussion about basically, you know, work, right? You know, absolutely, right? Like work, you know, there's a difference between work and being productive. And I think that there's no human being that doesn't want to be productive, that doesn't want to do something that will benefit humankind. I don't believe that. I don't believe that if there was no capitalist system, all human beings would just sit down and stare at each other and do nothing, right? But absolutely, that's the idea that they try to give you. And that's what, you know, absolutely the correlation here is that, you know, capitalism is destroying all the land bases, and capitalism is also destroying life, like not life in the sense of like literally people are losing their lives, which is occurring, but life in the sense of like even this living that we do is not fulfilling. There is no fulfillment. There's a lack of it. And it literally is because, like we said in the last reading of Ricardo Flores Magón, Preaching Peace is a Crime, right? Revolutionary workers need to cultivate this respect. We have this false sense of respecting work, respecting your supervisor, respecting capitalism, respecting private property, respecting all these things. And what we need to be doing, like the comrade's saying, is creating a sense of fuck all those things. But all right, y'all. With that, we leave you until next week. Lates.